Jakob shared our vision where we say that in the future we want to be in a place where any organization that has business processes that are core to this organization, that are worth automating, that these organizations use Camunda technology to automate that. And obviously, that is not something that you can do in a day. It's not something where we can flip a switch and then somehow we have achieved that. In this presentation, I want to talk about the journey that an enterprise that wants to become a truly process-oriented, digital, automated enterprise can go through the steps that they need to go through to become this enterprise. And before we start with this journey, I would just want to highlight two things again that Jakob talked about already. And the first one is, when we talk about this digital transformation and then ultimately about automation, we need to talk about the right kind of automation. Business processes are everywhere, and they have always been there. So as soon as an organization gets to a point where it says we want to do the same thing repeatedly, consistently, or we want to create the same product repeatedly or consistently, then business processes are there. I'm sure the Roman Empire had really good business processes. And as soon as information technology emerged, as soon as we had computers, we also started automating these business processes. But the problem is that often these business processes are buried. So if I have everything in code, if I have batch processing, I have it automated, but not in the right way. It's sort of like, a body without a head. So the body is programmed to do a certain thing, but there's nothing controlling it. We can't change it. We have no agility. And now over the last years, workflow automation emerged, which gives us the right way of automating business processes. And one very key part here is to make the process explicit, so to draw it so that everybody can see it and that we can all be on the same page. This is what unlocks then all the other benefits that come from that: control, visibility, and the possibility to involve multiple stakeholders. So that's one thing, the right kind of automation. The second thing is about scale. We talk about the automated enterprise. We need to be able to automate business processes in the right way at a significant scale. And that means that it has certain dimensions. It's about not automating one business process, but multiple ones. And it's about involving all the stakeholders that care about these processes. And of course, it's also about doing it at a considerable load and throughput. And getting to this scale is what will be core for enterprises that want to truly compete in the digital world. So now let's look at this journey that an enterprise can go through. And we will start small. And this is also how we experience our own customer projects, so where our customers start, and that is usually we have a very concrete project, and the setup can be something like this. We have a business unit, it can be an insurance company, for example, and they need a new project. So they want to automate damage reports to a further extent than that they have it today. And they want to create a better experience for their customers around that. So we have a business unit, and in there we will have different stakeholders. And what will happen is this business unit will request an automation solution from their IT department. The IT department, again, we will have different stakeholders. We'll have an IT manager, and then some other roles like a software developer. We will have some analysts that are maybe very familiar with something like BPMN. We will have DevOps people, SREs. We will have the whole tech crew that is able to deliver the solution. Now, at this point, and this is what Jakob said, we need to assemble the right puzzle to deliver the solution. And of course, workflow automation is not the only piece of that puzzle. We will need to maybe be able to scan damage reports that come in through the traditional way. We will have a lot of existing systems that we need to integrate. Maybe we want to apply some new AI technology for, scoring and rating and recognizing patterns around the damage reports that come in. yes, we need to assemble that whole puzzle, but one very key part of that puzzle will be the workflow automation and the technology behind that. And this is interesting. It's something that is currently evolving. So the problems that workflow technology solves is a space that is currently evolving significantly. This is a framework that Bernd has come up with, and it classifies problems where workflow automation technology makes sense along different criteria. So for example, on the right-hand side, we have things that are really long-running, and there workflow technology solves interesting problems, like maintaining state and being in control of when we need to change that state. At the same time, as everything is getting more distributed, and we have more problems coming up around orchestrating transactions, business transactions across distributed systems, this problem space grows. And what we see then at a point where, this business unit requested the automation project and now the IT team looks into it, they will become aware of workflow automation technology. They become aware that they have these problems in their project, and then often they look at Camunda as a solution to solve these problems. Why do they often choose Camunda? This is also how we started. Well, because it's very developer-friendly. That's, it's the IT department making this decision. And of course, they will turn to a solution that they can easily use. And for me, this is about three key things. It's about the fact that it's open source, there's no vendor lock-in, and it's very lightweight. I know it's a silly thing. The thing where the Camunda engine, after all the time we spend on it and all the features we have built into it, it's still super lightweight in the sense that it's 3.5 megabytes, heavy when you look at the jar file. I know it's silly, but somehow I like it. So it's about that, but it's also about when you use Camunda, you can just do software engineering the usual way. So you're not predominantly or primarily doing a Camunda project, but you are doing your development project, and one piece of the technology puzzle that you have in that project is Camunda. So we can apply all the regular software engineering practices that we need to apply, like test-driven development, continuous deployment, and all the other, agile processes where we can iterate, where we can improve, different kinds of programming practices, functional programming, object-oriented programming. So we can all apply all this rich practice that has been developed in the software engineering space over the last decades. We can apply all of that in our Camunda project. And the third aspect is the technology stack. Technology is not standing still. Things are evolving over time, all the time. The things that I talked about here back then at BPMCon in 2012, Java Enterprise Edition 6, it's not the only thing anymore. There's a lot of things that are relevant. There is different ways of how to deploy software. There's different ways of how to develop it. There's different ways of operating it. And what is important when we select a key component of our technology puzzle is that it plays well with all the technology stacks that we're going to use in our projects. So this is, our DNA. This is where we are coming from and where we were always strong and where we will always be strong. And that's why when you go into a project like that, technology teams often select Camunda as their key piece in this technology puzzle. Now, once we have developed our project, we get into a stage where we need to put it into production. And this is something where, when I look back over time, we haven't always been as strong as in the other aspect. So initially, Camunda was a very lightweight, a very developer-friendly platform, and it was adopted by many different projects to orchestrate and manage key business processes. The stakes are high. So if we are an e-commerce store and people are ordering things, they always want to have their stuff delivered, not 99% of the time, or almost always. And to ensure that, we need a technology stack that allows us to, deliver on this promise. And There's different things in the Camunda stack that we came up over time. One key piece is obviously the operations tool cockpit, which became extremely powerful over time. And when we look into this and I try to understand why is it so powerful and why does it solve very crucial problems in the operation space, well, the first thing we notice is that now it becomes, it pays off that we have automated our business process in an explicit way, that we have modeled it with BPMN and that we have visualized it. Because this introduces visibility, so if we have problems, every stakeholder involved is able to see where these problems are. So for example, this is a very simple process. We see that here, charge credit card, there's 2,300 instances in that step, and 317 of these have problems. So we know where the problems are. This creates visibility and transparency. The second thing is, since we're using a workflow engine, we're getting control. So this is now not buried in a certain system, but I can do something about these 317 orders right here. I can look into their payload, I can change it. I can move them to another step. I can create a new version of my process that fixes a certain problem and upgrade all these 317 instances to this new version to fix this problem. And over time, mostly in this case driven by a lot of customer feedback that we've gotten over time from contexts where customers use this tool in very mission-critical situations, it emerged as something where it is very, very easy to discover problems, to see when we have problems, to analyze them, and then to solve them. And then that's one piece of the puzzle, but the other piece of the puzzle is, of course, the continuous operations of the Camunda stack itself. And that is also something that, when we started out in the beginning, was not as easy as it is today. So, for example, over time, we introduced updates without downtimes, so that I can, I don't need to shut down the whole system, but I can update it while it's running, if I have a cluster. We are continuously releasing security patches, and this year and last year we focused a lot on this problem where when you run the Camunda stack over time, obviously it creates a lot of data in the history, and now we have very powerful solutions for getting rid of that data. In November, the next release will come out, and there, on top of the existing background cleanup of history data that you can already use, there will be powerful features around how to partition the database history in the relational database so that we can have an even more efficient way of deleting historic data. Looking forward, we are, of course, never at the end of that journey, but we are looking into out-of-the-box solutions for archiving history data. So at some point, we need to put, it's not enough to just delete it, because then it's gone, but we need to have a way of archiving it somewhere. Maybe that doesn't need to be as efficient when you search through it, but it's there, and when we have an audit in the future or something like that, we can access it, and then we can trace things. And obviously, we are also looking at how to provide Camunda as a hosted service in the cloud. In this combination, having a really lightweight and very developer-friendly solution on the one hand, but having the capabilities to operate it in really mission-critical scenarios on the other hand, is then something which can truly help organizations to automate these mission-critical processes. So at this point, we have reached a certain milestone where we have a solution and it's running. But now the question is, of course, this business process that we have automated, is it any good? There's no value in automating a crappy process. As a German version of that statement below that I'm not going to translate. But the question then is, how do we know if the process is crappy? How do we find out? And the way to find out is actually to look at the data. Because the workflow engine produces data all the time, and when we look at that, we can find out what actually is our customer experience. And this is something we came up with more proactively, and behind that is obviously Camunda Optimize, where we have the possibility now to, since we know the business process explicitly, We can look at the data and map it to the process and then provide very interesting visibility into what is going on. And based on this, we can now decide, is our process good? Is it delivering a good experience to our customer, or is it not delivering a good experience to our customer? So for example, just a very simple thing, we can look at how long does it take? Very simple thing, how long does it take to execute the process? And then maybe in 95% of cases, the cycle time is 2 days, which is what we want. But in 5% of cases, it's more. Question is why? So we can drill down, and we can look into these specific instances and find out why they take so long. And obviously, this quickly becomes a big data problem. So the way this architecture is set up, when you have your Camunda engine running, there's a data pipeline from the Camunda engine into Camunda Optimize, and then all the data is stored in a big database, Elasticsearch, where it's indexed in a way where we can run these aggregations and analysis queries really, really efficiently. And this way, Camunda Optimize allows us to visualize, analyze, and improve business processes continuously. There's a new version coming up the end of the quarter now, I think next week or the week after. You can build powerful dashboards. You can analyze why certain correlations may be occurring. We can track causality between different items of data and then how the process behaves. And that gives us a lot of input into how we can improve it. Now, we can look one step forward. Because when a human can find interesting correlations in the data, maybe the tool can do that automatically. And this is something that is now very exciting for us because in the future, it will be possible, and this is what we will also spend some significant effort on next year, is building features where we will apply machine learning, pattern recognition, and AI in general to find those correlations that explain the behavior of the process and maybe even make predictions and projections automatically. At this point, we have a successful project. We've implemented the process, it's running in production reliably, and we're even able to continuously improve it. So the next challenge now is to do that again and again. Not just for one process, but broad scale. And what helps organizations at that point is if this first project goes really well, it will have this, this lighthouse effect, where suddenly other people get interested. They want to do the same thing. Or some other business stakeholders get interested about BPMN, and if we have the BPMN, then we can visualize what we have. So once you plant the seed in the organization, have one really successful project around automation with Camunda, it gets easier and easier to do it again. And it's also what we see at certain customers. So for example, at BPMCon, I think it was 3 years ago, Deutsche Bahn talked about this tree project, where, whenever they unroot a tree in one place, they need to plant another tree in another place. To sort of, must be like a Zen thing, so that things balance out over time, something like that. Problem is, it's not enough to plant the tree, but you have to keep it alive for 20 years. And then you need to drive there every day, every year, and then look at the tree. It's still there. It's growing well. And then you can make your tick in your app. Okay, it's still here. So that was their first project. Very long-running processes, of course, over 20 years. Last year, they presented about a second project, which is a very big infrastructure in all of Europe to route the trains in a different way. It was very interesting, and there's more projects on the way there. So that is an example of an enterprise that goes through this journey of going from one project to many projects. Now, when we do that, it's not enough to just do the same thing we did in that first project, but there's more. Now we have other business units coming in. We have the landscape of all the processes is growing. We have more stakeholders coming in. And that means that we need to remain in control, and we need to ensure, for example, discoverability of all the processes that we have automated. And what we are currently working on in Camunda is providing a tool that down the road will help organizations to do that. The tool is called Kawemo. Currently, there's a very small version of that available as a SaaS product. But down the road, this will become an integral piece of our technology stack. It will run on the cloud, but it will also run on-premise. And it will allow big organizations to structure all their processes, to involve everybody that needs to be involved in a process automation project, and with that sort of spread this, this BPMN virus across the organization. And that's what's going to be the mission of this tool: facilitate collaboration, different stakeholders, everybody that needs to be involved in a business process automation project in an enterprise. So this will be a very key piece moving forward. And then there's something else that we're observing when we talk about scale, when we talk about, not doing one business process, but doing multiple ones. In the United States, we have one customer, they're really interesting, they're called Zymergen, and they're a biotech company, and they have an actual biotech factory. So in this factory, there's robots, there is all kinds of interesting chemical experiments going on. I don't really fully understand what it is about, but what they have achieved is they have the robots and the scientists work together in this automated enterprise. And what they have is they have a core technology team that creates the functionality of how having a certain robot doing a certain thing, or how to assign a task to one of the scientists that needs to do something. And they have done this in a way where these building blocks are reusable. And there is a pattern emerging there. And that is something that we see coming up even more, where we have a certain domain in which there are certain kinds of tasks, certain kinds of activities, or maybe small fragments of a process that can be combined and can be done in different ways. It can be about customization, but it can also just be about arranging the same building blocks in different ways. And this is something we're currently looking into, where we have this idea of providing a platform and framework where organizations can build domain-specific solutions in this space. So where we have a core team of developers and domain experts that provide reusable building blocks, like service tasks, but even whole fragments of processes as a library that can then be combined by non-developers. This is not the dreaded low-code thing. So this is not about, a manager can somehow automate the shipment process of Zalando by combining visual blocks. That's never going to happen. This is different. This is really domain-specific and then presented to those non-developers in a way that by understanding the domain and within a certain degree of freedom, being able to combine and create new things. And this is something we will look at probably in the future, where we see a lot of potential to allow organizations to scale this use of process automation in the future. As we scale this more and more, at the end of this journey is what we call the automated enterprise. So the enterprise that has automated all its significant business processes. And I don't want to steal their thunder too much. There's one example where it goes in that direction. This is a slide that Goldman Sachs used at our community meetup in New York a couple of months ago. And there you see an enterprise on its journey to becoming a truly automated enterprise. For example, they have more than 14,000 unique active workflows in their platform. That is significant. So that's one thing. Just very broad scale, many different processes. Another thing is that, well, we need to look at all business processes. And now we're getting back to this thing where we talked in the beginning about the right kind of automation. There's many different business processes and organizations that we currently cannot automate in the right way with BPMN and all the visibility benefits that come from that. So for example, this is something that we talked to AT&T, a very large customers of ours in the United States about. They said, well, when somebody picks up the phone and wants to place a call, that's a very interesting moment for us, because we need to figure out how to route this call, how to bill this customer. Do they even have, the right contract to make this call? Later we need to settle it, all these things. And that's something where they said, well, look, your technology could provide us with a lot of benefits to automate this business process, but we can't do it. We have more than 100 million customers making millions and millions of calls, and there's no workflow technology that helps us to automate this. Second example, the wrong kind of automation. Batch processing. Who is doing batch processing in their company at some point? Quite a few. Batch processing is great because it's a very efficient way of automating things. I can apply the same action to a whole batch of things and do it at the same time. But it also introduces significant problems. One is about how fast are we? Jakob mentioned this. People are more and more becoming, digital natives, where we expect things to just happen immediately. That's one thing that is problematic with batch processing. Another thing that is problematic with batch processing is that we lose this context. As soon as I start putting different items that are related to different, what we would call business process instances in one batch, I lose this process context. So I lose the context of what happened before and what happened after. So I lose the whole tracking and visibility thing. But batch processing is everywhere, and one of the main reasons is that it's very efficient, and that many of the problems that we solve with batch processing, we cannot solve them with workflow technology in this day. And this is something that Bernd has come up with again. So this is sort of classifying use cases for workflow automation along, with throughput and scaling axis here. So there's many things that workflow automation technology can already do today. There's a lot more that it can do that people are not always aware of, but there is a space here on the left where no workflow engine technology up to this point can get to. No one, well, except for one, which is something new that we're building. It's called ZB, and now we are in this big workflow space where we're automating business processes with this BPMN and workflow paradigm that we have never thought of automating in the past. ZB is a completely new kind of workflow engine. Internally, it's more built like a high-throughput messaging system, and it brings some key benefits that no other workflow engine that I am aware of can bring to the table so far. And this is horizontal scalability, high throughput, the completely message-driven architecture where you can send in a message and then just forget about it, and at some point a workflow will react to it, which is extremely powerful when we think about asynchronous architectures. And it has a publish-subscribe interaction model where it orchestrates workers, microservices, whatever we have that implements the business logic in a way that is truly scaling and truly decoupled from each other. So we don't impose any restrictions on these workers in the sense that they need to be available now or they need to be able to process a certain load now, but no, they subscribe and can then process messages in the rate that they can process them. ZB is something that is currently in a research and development phase. There is an open source project around it. You can check it out at zb.io. First stable release is targeted for next year, where we will then also bring out our big workflow platform with combining it with some other tools that you can use to automate business processes in this new space where we couldn't apply this paradigm before. So at this point, we are at the end of our journey, and now if an organization follows us through that, they can then become this automated enterprise that we were talking about. So What does that mean for the Camunda technology? What does that mean for the future? We have a strategy around this that has two key items. The first one is Camunda will continue to provide the best lightweight, developer-friendly platform for implementing mission-critical workflows in the future. This is our DNA. This is what we have always done, and this is what we will continue to be doing. Now, when you look closely at what we have been doing over particularly the last years, is that more and more we are also investing into tools and solutions to allow organizations to scale the use of this platform across more and more projects and business processes. And that's the second part of our strategy moving forward. So we will evolve the Camunda product stack in a way where organizations can apply it on a more and more broad scale way. And that's where we're going. So I'm really excited to have everybody here for this conference. We will see very interesting case studies where you will see how our customers are currently and users are currently applying Camunda in their projects. And I'm looking forward to some really interesting discussions to learn about how we can even be better in the future. So thank you very much. That's it.